Affirmative speech 1. Imagine buying a device only to find out that you don't truly own it. When it breaks, you are forced to go back to the manufacturer for costly repairs or replacements, leaving you with little choice and mounting expenses. The right to repair legislation offers a solution to this growing problem. In this speech, I will present 3 key points, which are blame, ill, and cure. Point 1 being blame. Manufacturers have created a repair monopoly by withholding critical repair tools, parts, and documentation from consumers and independent repair shops. Aaron Perzowski, a law professor at the University of Michigan, describes this as a tethered economy, where consumers remain tied to manufacturers even after purchasing a product. This practice is unfairly limiting consumer choice, and it creates an artificial dependency on manufacturers, which allows them to dictate repair costs. The blame lies squarely with manufacturers who prioritize profits over consumer rights and fair market competition. Now this brings me to my second point of ill. The monopolistic repair practices of manufacturers is causing significant harm to consumers and the environment. A US PIRG survey found that households are spending an average of $1,767 on electronic products in 2021. That's up from 19% from 2019. Many of these costs could have been avoided if an affordable repair option was available. Limited repairability increases electronic waste, which is a major contributor to pollution. Devices that could be repaired are discarded, adding to landfills and harming ecosystems. Without intervention, these harms will continue to escalate, burdening consumers financially and damaging the planet. Point 3 being cure. Right to repair laws provide a comprehensive solution to these problems by empowering consumers and fostering a competitive repair market. Oregon Senator Janine Solomon argues that these laws ensure consumers have access to spare parts, tools, and manuals, enabling them to repair their own devices or seek independent services if they need. Sandra Block, a personal finance expert, notes that these laws can save consumers significant money by avoiding costly manufacturer repairs. By extending the life of electronic devices, the right to repair laws reduce the volume of e-waste and the need for resource-intensive manufacturing processes. The cure is effective, achievable, and benefits both consumers and the environment. So far, I have effectively established the case that manufacturers are to blame for creating monopolistic repair practices that harm consumers and the environment. These practices result in financial burdens and e-waste, constituting significant social and economic ills. The right to repair laws provide a viable and impactful cure by empowering consumers, reducing costs, and fostering sustainability.
My name is Amin Awad, and I am the negative in this case. As the idea of the right to repair may seem enticing for consumers, it introduces consequences that will harm innovation, increase costs, and compromise quality. In my speech, I will refute key arguments supporting the right to repair and show low such legislation would disadvantage consumers. Firstly, refutation. It is the right to repair laws which will harm the current repair market. My opponent thinks that these RTR laws will empower independent repair shops, but my claim is that these RTR laws would just disrupt the existing repair market and ultimately hurt consumers. According to Alex Rtr, a researcher at the Competitive Enterprise Institute, the repair industry in the U.S. is worth $20 billion, consisting of over 48,000 small businesses. Consumers already rely on these shops to repair devices like a cracked screen without government intervention. mandating manufacturers to sell parts and tools that would lead compliance costs, raising prices for consumers, and putting small repair shops at a disadvantage. Rather than improving access to repair services, this legislation would risks establishing an industry that provides affordable options for consumers. As costs rise, independent repair shops may struggle to compete with manufacturers' authorized services, leaving consumers with fewer choices and higher prices. My second point, the right to repair sacrifices long-term product innovation for short-term gain. My opponent argues that the repairability is essential for substantial and reducing e-waste. I believe increasing repairability undermines product quality, worsens innovation over time. According to Michael Conlick, professor of business law at San Angelo State University, he explains that prioritizing repairability would lead to significant compromises in product quality over the long run. For example, instead of technological advancements seen in devices like the new iPhone, we could see a stagnation leading consumers with outdated technology similar to the 10-year-old devices. By focusing on repairability, manufacturers would have fewer resources to allocate toward innovation, depriving consumers of cutting-edge products and technological breakthroughs. The disadvantage of RTR. The disadvantage of RTR is that it will increase costs for manufacturers and consumers. The RTR legislation forces manufacturers to produce additional parts, manuals, and tools for independent use, increasing production costs. Alex Rayner, who I mentioned before, argues that compliance with these laws will result in higher manufacturing costs that these expenses will then be passed on to the consumer at a higher price. The impact of all of this is that as costs rise, products will become less accessible to lower income consumers, exacerbating economic inequalities. Thank you.
Imagine a world where you are no longer forced to throw away expensive devices or pay exorbitant repair costs simply because manufacturers restrict your options. The right to repair legislation is not just about convenience, it's about fairness, sustainability, and the consumer empowerment. To bring back my point of manufacturers are to blame, my position remains strong. Manufacturers maintain a monopolistic control over the repair markets. This restricts consumers and independent repair shops from accessing necessary tools, parts, and documentation. Aaron Przowski highlighted that this tethered economy traps consumers in a relationship where they must rely solely on the manufacturers for repairs, stifling competition. The negative claims that existing repair markets function well and that the additional regulation would disrupt them. This is misleading. Current repair markets are limited and expensive because manufacturers deliberately withhold critical resources. Without intervention, these monopolistic practices will continue to harm consumers and small businesses. Now, my second point of the economic and environmental ills still holds strong. The right to repair legislation directly addresses the blame and ill by empowering consumers and fostering competition. Oregon Senator Janine Solomon emphasizes that these laws ensure consumers have access to spare parts, tools, and manuals, leveling the playing field for repair options. The negative argues that compliance with the right to repair laws will increase costs for manufacturers, leading to higher prices for consumers. This ignores the long-term savings for consumers and the environmental benefits of extended product lifespans. Independent repair markets will also drive competition, potentially lowering prices over time. Now, the negative side claims that the right to repair laws increase cost for manufacturers and stifles innovation. Let's break this down. That claim that manufacturers will incur excessive cost is speculative. Many manufacturers already produce repairable devices without significant cost increase. Apple, for example, has introduced self-repair programs, showing that compliance is feasible without drastically raising prices. Repair costs are already high because manufacturers control the market. Right to repair legislation introduces competition, which historically leads to reduced costs for consumers. The suggestion that repairability diminishes product quality is exaggerated. Repair-friendly designs can coexist with high-performance features, as seen in existing repairable devices like the Fairphone. My case stands strong. Manufacturers' monopolistic practices harm consumers and limit repair markets. These practices lead to economic burdens and environmental damage. The right to repair legislation is the solution, empowering consumers, reducing costs, and promoting sustainability. The negative arguments rely on speculation and overlook the broader economic and environmental benefits to the right to repair laws. By passing this legislation, we can create a fair and more sustainable future for everyone.
Negative conclusion. Everyone, today we are here to see if the RTR legislation should be passed. As my opponent thinks they have proven it's consumer friendly, I have fully demonstrated through clear evidence that the cost, both economical and technological, far outweigh the supposed benefits. This debate is on the cure versus cost ratio, and it is evident that the costs of implementing right to repair laws are too high to justify the claimed benefits. I have won this debate because of these two key points. Firstly, RTR laws introduce significant eco costs that harm both manufacturers and consumers. I bring back Alex Rtr, who highlights the compliance with these laws, forces manufacturers to increase production costs, which are inevitably passed on to consumers in the form of higher prices. On the issue of cost, I win because the legislation burdens all stakeholders economically without achieving its goals. Secondly, long-term harm to innovation. My opponent's failure to account for the long-term consequences of prioritizing repairability over innovation cement my win in this debate. Michael Conlick addressed how increasing repairability leads to stagnation in technological advancements. Over time, the trade-off in quality will leave consumers with outdated products and just other issues that have been mentioned abroad. The issue that I have won is critical because it directly affects the future of consumer technology. I have fully demonstrated that the cost of RTR legislation, economic disruption, increased consumer prices, and is a harm to innovation, and it can be justified by the supposed benefits. Thank you.
Affirmative final speech. The debate over the right to repair legislation has highlighted critical issues of fairness, sustainability, and economic empowerment. Through careful examination, we have demonstrated that the right to repair law addresses the core problems of monopolistic control, economic harm, and environmental damage while offering a practical solution. On the issues of manufacturers, from the start, we had established that the manufacturers are directly responsible for the limited repair options available to consumers. By monopolizing their repair sources, they force consumers to rely on expensive, authorized services or replace devices altogether. The negative argued that existing repair markets are functioning well without intervention. This has demonstrated to be false. As Aaron Przowski explains, the current tethered economy gives manufacturers unfair control, stifling competition. If existing repair options were sufficient, consumers wouldn't face such high repair and replacement costs. We have shown that manufacturers are to blame for perpetrating these harms, meeting our burden of proof on this issue. On the issues of environmental and economic ills, The harms caused by restricted repairs or options are both significant and multifaceted. Economically, consumers bear the burden of higher costs, with households spending nearly $1,800 annually on electronic products. Environmentally, electronic waste is a growing crisis, exacerbated by the inability to repair devices. The negative argued that repairability would lead to diminished product quality and innovation. This is speculative and unsupported. Repairable devices like the Fairphone show how repairability and innovation can coexist. Furthermore, the short-term focus of innovation cannot outweigh the long-term economic and environmental harms caused by e-waste. My case provides a clear and measurable link between restricted repair options and these widespread harms, fulfilling our burden of proof. And on the final point of cure, right to repair legislation directly addresses the issues of blame and ill by requiring manufacturers to provide access to tools, parts, and documentation. This empowers consumers, fosters competition, and reduces waste. The negative claim that compliance costs would drive up prices and stifles innovation. Compliance costs are short-term concerns that have already been shown to be manageable by companies like Apple, which have introduced self-repair programs. Additionally, the long-term benefits of competition, lower repair costs, and reduce e-waste far outweigh any temporary compliance cost. The right to repair laws are a practical and effective solution that balance economic and environmental concerns, solidifying our case on this issue. Throughout this debate, I have shown that manufacturers are monopolistic practices that harm consumers and repair markets. These practices lead to economic burdens and environmental crisis. The right to repair law directly addresses these issues, empowering consumers and fostering sustainable practices. The negative case relies on speculative harms and short-term costs while ignoring the long-term benefits of consumer empowerment, economic savings, and the environmental sustainability. The right to repair legislation is a necessary and reasonable step towards a fairer and more sustainable future. Thank you.